Hello everyone and welcome to Monday morning. It's Stephen Whiteside here from theuptrend.com. In the pre-market this morning, a couple of stocks in the news. Apple got an upgrade this morning, some good news for Shopify, and some good news for Tesla. And all of those three are trading a little higher in the pre-market this morning. Stock index futures are slightly higher this morning. No real follow-through to the upside from Friday. Commodities are mixed with crude oil flat at the moment, while gold is up $6 in the pre-market on Monday morning. Let's do a little recap from last week, and we'll focus on some weekly charts in this presentation. Starting off with a weekly chart of the VIX. The VIX was down nearly 20% on the week, but still on a weekly buy signal. That would change this coming Friday if the VIX were to close below 1374, and that would change our bias from long-term bearish to long-term bullish. At the same time, we're short-term bullish at the moment as the VIX generated a sell signal on Tuesday. We're going to remain short-term bullish on the market as long as the VIX does not close above 1794 on Monday. Now, the VIX is still elevated. We're still expecting some stock market turbulence. It looks like the market wants to go from risk off to risk on. We saw a lot of risk on trading going into the weekend, and let's see if that can continue. Now, we are coming up to month end. Month end usually has a bullish bias to it. If there's downward pressure, a lot of times at month end, the month end bias will take some of the pressure off any down move. But traditionally, you don't see a lot of market crashes around month end. Now, looking at a weekly chart of the Dow was up 0.2% last week, still on a weekly sell signal, no change there. On a daily basis, the Dow generated a buy signal last Tuesday. It dipped through the lower channel line on Thursday, but came back and closed above it, and then traded higher on Friday. Now, looking at the weekly charts again, for the Dow, the biggest winner was Goldman Sachs, up nearly 6% on the week. The biggest loser was IBM, down nearly 8%, third week of a weekly sell signal for IBM. Then looking at the S&P 500. Now, both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 had inside weeks. Inside weeks are weeks of indecision. The market is really happy that it didn't take out the previous week's low. At the same time, we didn't take out the previous week's high. Maybe we can do that this week. Maybe that will act as resistance. Only time will tell. Now, looking at a daily chart of the SPY, you can see we ended Friday on a weekly buy signal. The pros are starting to come back, but have not taken control just yet. That could happen over the next couple of days. Now, my biggest concern right now is overhead resistance. Now, the next mathematical target for the SPY is $515.63, and you can see it acted as resistance back in early March. Then we broke above it, but ended up trading sideways for a few weeks, and so we have like a wall of resistance just above the 515.63 level, and that's also true on the NASDAQ. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Now, the biggest winner on the S&P 500 last week was ResMed. Big reversal for this stock, up nearly 22%. The second biggest winner was Supermicro, up 20% and change. No change in trend after making a new low for this move. So we still need a close above $991.11 to give us a new weekly buy signal for Supermicro. The biggest loser on the S&P 500 and on the NASDAQ 100 was Old Dominion Freight, down nearly 14% on the week. Now, looking at the NASDAQ 100, again, inside week, we're still on a weekly sell signal, no change. We traded up nearly 4% on the week, being led higher by the semiconductors. There's the NASDAQ back on a daily buy signal as of Friday's close. Again, the pros haven't taken control just yet, but that could happen over the next few days. And again, we're looking at a wall of resistance. Our mathematical target of 437.50 acted like resistance in early February. We were able to trade above that going into March, but basically traded sideways for a whole month. And so now we're looking at a wall of overhead resistance, and I think it'll be very difficult to slice through that, but we'll just have to wait and see. Mongo was the big winner last week, up over 17%, not enough to give us a buy signal. Inside week for NVIDIA, but it ended the week on a buy signal, up over 15% on the week, so a huge reversal for NVIDIA, and that helped push the semiconductors up as the big winners from last week. And again, Old Dominion Freight was the big loser, followed by Meta. Big down week for Meta, and back on a weekly sell signal. Then after Meta, we had Intel down just under 7% on the week. So Intel's been on a weekly sell signal for most of 2024. Moving on to the Canadian market, the TSX was up 0.75%, closing at the upper channel line, so not concerned about a sell signal this week. The composite index, just like the Dow, generated a buy signal on Tuesday, dipped through on Thursday, but came back on Thursday and Friday, so no change in trend there. The pros almost ready to take control of the TSX. The biggest winner on the TSX and the TSX 60 was First Quantum, which was up nearly 15% on the week. The biggest loser was Energy Fuels, down over 8% on the week, making a new low for this move. So we've been on a weekly sell signal since late 2023. Then looking at the TSX 60, looking very similar to the TSX Composite and the Dow. The biggest winner on the TSX 60 was First Quantum, followed by Teck. Teck trading back up to the previous high. Now, it was the railroads that were the big losers last week. Both CP and CN came down sharply, ending the week on weekly sell signals, followed by Rogers. And if you're watching our daily videos, Rogers generated a daily buy signal and then quickly gave that up. So unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to go back down to the October lows before Rogers can find any footing. Next up, let's take a look at the world of bonds. And the 30-year bond continued to move lower last week, and the yield continued to move higher. Now, there may be something positive for the stock market going on. While we saw the TLT and the XBB trade down for the week, we did see a little bit of money coming back into the emerging markets, and we saw a little more money coming back into the junk bonds. And if we can get junk bonds moving higher, that could help support the stock market. Looking at commodities, starting with crude oil, we're up nearly 2% on the week. No change in trend there. And of course, no change in trend for natural gas, down a little over 1% on the week. Looking at the metals, and if copper is the global economic barometer, it is certainly pointing higher at the moment. And so copper continued to move up last week. We saw gold down $66 and change. It's up $6 in the pre-market this morning. And we had silver down nearly 5.5%. It is trading slightly higher last time I checked. And let's finish off with the cryptos. We had Bitcoin trading down on the week. We had Ethereum trading up slightly on the week. Both are still on weekly buy signals, so no change in trend there. Obviously, Ethereum looking a little weaker than Bitcoin at the moment. Okay, folks, that's all for this morning's presentation. So far, it looks like we're going to have a fairly quiet open on Monday morning. There's no big economic numbers coming out this morning, so we'll just have to let the market do what it wants to do on Monday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Next time you'll hear my voice is on Tuesday morning.
Thank you for watching today's presentation. If you found this video useful, please consider hitting the like button, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel to ensure you never miss a video. We look forward to having you join us for our next daily market update.